The Galactic Academy, renowned as the pinnacle of interstellar education, stood as a testament to the ingenuity of countless civilizations. Its gleaming spires stretched high into the stratosphere of the neutral planet Axion, a world carefully chosen to host the brightest minds in the galaxy. For decades, the Academy had been the proving ground where students of various species competed to demonstrate their intellect, creativity, and adaptability. It was here, amidst an atmosphere of intense rivalry and intergalactic pride, that the exam of the century was set to take place. Maya, a young human student, had arrived on Axion with a mixture of trepidation and determination. She had trained relentlessly for months, studying every obscure galactic law, historical event, and scientific theory she could find. Maya knew humans were a minority among the galaxy's dominant races. While Earth had made significant strides in technology and diplomacy, it still lagged behind the advanced societies of the Zilvians, the Kurans, and the enigmatic Loomis. This exam wasn't just about her personal achievement. It was a chance to prove that humans could compete on equal footing with the best minds in the universe. Drax, a Zilvian student, watched Maya enter the examination hall with thinly veiled disdain. His species prided itself on being the most intelligent and technologically advanced in the galaxy. With their crystalline brains capable of processing vast amounts of data in seconds, Zilvians saw other races as intellectually inferior. Drax had no reason to believe a human could perform well in the exam. He glanced at Maya, noting her plain, non-threatening appearance. Her modest demeanor and simple attire were a stark contrast to the ornate, glowing robes that symbolized Zilvian superiority. He smirked to himself, already confident in his victory. The examination hall was a marvel of galactic architecture, a circular chamber with transparent walls that allowed the students to gaze out at Axion's breathtaking landscapes. Each desk was equipped with a holoscreen and an adaptive interface tailored to the physiology of the student sitting before it. Maya took her seat, adjusting the interface to fit her hands, while Drax settled into his position across the room. He leaned back, exuding an air of effortless confidence, his crystalline fingers tapping rhythmically on the desk as he waited for the test to begin. As the room filled with students from every corner of the galaxy, a hush fell over the crowd. A towering Loomis professor, whose shimmering, translucent body radiated an otherworldly glow, floated to the center of the room. Her voice resonated directly in the minds of the students, bypassing language barriers with the ease of advanced telepathy. "Welcome, students," she said, her tone both soothing and commanding. "Today you will face challenges designed to test not only your knowledge, but also your ability to think critically and creatively. The questions are drawn from the collective wisdom of all represented species. Remember, this is not a test of your individual race's capabilities, but of your own intellect and ingenuity. Begin." The holoscreens lit up, projecting the first question in glowing letters. Maya took a deep breath, steadying her nerves. The question was a complex mathematical problem involving multidimensional calculus. She quickly began scribbling equations on the interactive interface, her mind racing as she calculated potential solutions. Drax glanced at the question and smirked. This was child's play for a Zilvian. His crystalline brain processed the problem almost instantly, and he confidently entered his answer. As the test progressed, the questions grew increasingly challenging. The topics ranged from quantum physics to interstellar diplomacy, with riddles and puzzles interspersed to test the students' lateral thinking. Maya remained focused, her brow furrowed in concentration. She worked methodically, analyzing each question and breaking it down into manageable parts. Drax, on the other hand, breezed through the first half of the test, his confidence growing with each correct answer. But then something unexpected happened. The questions took a sudden turn, shifting from pure logic and science to abstract reasoning and cultural knowledge. Drax began to struggle. One question required interpreting a philosophical text written by an ancient Loomis scholar, whose thoughts were expressed in a series of complex light patterns. Drax found the patterns incomprehensible. He stole a glance at Maya, noticing her calm expression as she worked through the problem. She seemed to understand the nuances of the question in a way he could not. For the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed Drax's mind. How could a human, a species known for its relatively short lifespan and lack of advanced neural processing, excel in such a prestigious exam? He dismissed the thought, attributing her apparent ease to luck. But as the questions continued, he found himself struggling more and more, while Maya appeared to navigate the test with increasing confidence. Drax's frustration grew. He prided himself on his intellect, and the idea of being outperformed by a human was unthinkable. He began to pay closer attention to Maya, observing her methods and mannerisms. She worked with a quiet determination, her hands moving swiftly across the interface as she solved each problem. Drax realized she wasn't just relying on knowledge, she was using intuition and creativity to approach the questions in ways he hadn't considered. As the exam neared its midpoint, the tension in the room was palpable. The students worked in near silence, broken only by the faint hum of the holoscreens and the occasional murmur of frustration. Maya remained focused, her mind fully immersed in the test. Drax, however, found himself increasingly distracted. His initial confidence had given way to a growing sense of insecurity. He couldn't shake the feeling that Maya had an edge, something he couldn't quantify or replicate. Determined to maintain his standing, Drax decided to cheat. He activated a subtle neural link embedded in his crystalline brain, allowing him to project his thoughts toward Maya's interface. The technology was highly advanced, undetectable to all but the most sophisticated security systems. Drax justified his actions by telling himself it wasn't truly cheating, he was merely leveling the playing field. If humans could succeed through creativity and intuition, then he had every right to use his species' technological advantages. Maya, unaware of Drax's actions, continued working diligently. Her mind was a whirlwind of calculations and ideas as she tackled each question with precision. Drax observed her closely, synchronizing his neural link with her interface to replicate her answers. He smiled to himself, confident that his plan was foolproof. He had no doubt that her success so far was the result of luck or guesswork, and he believed his superior intellect would allow him to refine her answers as needed. The exam continued, with Drax growing increasingly reliant on Maya's work. He marveled at her ability to solve even the most abstract puzzles, though he refused to admit it was anything more than coincidence. For her part, Maya remained completely absorbed in the test, oblivious to the growing drama unfolding around her. As the final section of the exam approached, the stakes couldn't have been higher. The questions had become almost impossibly difficult, designed to push the students to their limits. Drax, despite his earlier confidence, felt a twinge of unease. He glanced at Maya one last time, silently vowing that no matter what, he would come out on top. Drax leaned back in his chair, momentarily pleased with himself. The neural link had successfully synchronized with Maya's interface, allowing him to effortlessly mimic her progress. While he still found some of the questions baffling, he dismissed his confusion as irrelevant now that he had a secret advantage. His focus shifted entirely to watching her work, interpreting her actions and replicating her answers with minor adjustments to suit his style. To Drax, it felt like a flawless strategy. Maya, unaware of his intentions, remained fully immersed in the exam. Her steady rhythm of problem-solving was both a reflection of her preparation and an expression of her innate ability to adapt to complex situations. She wasn't racing against time, but rather using every second efficiently. The room's atmosphere was tense, with faint glimmers of light reflecting off the crystalline spires outside. But Maya's mind was far removed from her surroundings. She focused solely on deciphering the nuances of each question. The next challenge appeared on the holoscreens, a multi-layered puzzle involving interstellar trade laws across 10 civilizations. The puzzle required balancing resource allocation, taxation agreements, and ethical trade practices, an intricate web of regulations that even the most experienced diplomats often struggled to master. Maya scanned the parameters carefully, her eyes narrowing as she mentally mapped out the connections. She began constructing her solution, piece by piece, relying on her sharp analytical instincts. Drax, observing her through the neural link, was initially confident he could outpace her. However, as the minutes ticked by, he realized the complexity of the task went beyond his expectations. The solution Maya was crafting seemed counterintuitive, yet somehow it worked. Every adjustment she made aligned perfectly with the parameters, creating a balanced system that fulfilled the requirements of all 10 civilizations. Drax grudgingly acknowledged her ingenuity, though he refused to let it intimidate him. As the question neared completion, Drax grew bolder. He replicated her solution exactly, convinced it was the safest option. Yet an unsettling thought lingered in his mind. Why was this human succeeding where he struggled? The Zilvian education system had prepared him for every conceivable challenge, yet Maya's methods continually eluded his understanding. His crystalline brain, designed for rapid data processing, couldn't replicate the fluid, intuitive leaps she made. It was as if her thought process operated on an entirely different frequency. Maya submitted her solution with a sense of quiet confidence. She felt the familiar satisfaction of solving a particularly challenging problem, a sensation she had come to appreciate during her grueling months of preparation. The trade laws question had been one of the most intricate puzzles she'd ever encountered, but her methodical approach had paid off. She moved on to the next challenge without hesitation, her focus unbroken. Drax, however, was growing increasingly restless. He had relied on the neural link to keep up with Maya, but now he found himself questioning its reliability. His pride as a Zilvian, a member of the most intellectually superior race in the galaxy, was at odds with the reality of his situation. Each time he copied her solution, he felt a small pang of discomfort, as though his actions were eroding the foundation of his confidence. The next question appeared, and Drax felt a surge of relief. It was a logic puzzle involving geometric patterns, something Zilvians excelled at due to their advanced visual spatial cognition. He tackled the problem eagerly, eager to reassert his superiority. Within moments, he had crafted a solution that he was certain was flawless. He glanced at Maya, expecting to see her struggling, but to his dismay, she was already finishing her answer. The difference was subtle, but it was there. Her solution incorporated an additional layer of complexity that he had overlooked. Drax stared at his own answer, his crystalline fingers hovering uncertainly over the interface. His mind raced as he tried to understand how she had reached her conclusion. Frustration bubbled within him as he realized that even in a field where his species was supposed to dominate, Maya had outperformed him. He reluctantly adjusted his solution to match hers, telling himself that it was a strategic choice rather than an admission of defeat. The exam continued, each question more challenging than the last. For Maya, it was a test of endurance as much as intellect. She felt the strain of the relentless pace, but she refused to let it deter her. Her thoughts moved fluidly from one problem to the next, drawing on every ounce of her training and creativity. For Drax, his experience was a stark contrast. His initial confidence had eroded, replaced by a simmering frustration that threatened to overwhelm him. He clung to the neural link as his lifeline, but it offered no solace for the growing doubts in his mind. As the final segment of the exam approached, the atmosphere in the room grew almost unbearably tense. The students around them were visibly fatigued, their expressions ranging from determination to despair. Maya, though exhausted, maintained her composure. She knew the hardest challenges were yet to come, but she welcomed them as an opportunity to prove herself. Drax, on the other hand, felt his resolve wavering. His reliance on the neural link had exposed him to Maya's brilliance in a way he hadn't anticipated, forcing him to confront the uncomfortable reality of his own limitations. For the first time, Drax began to question the assumptions that had shaped his understanding of the galaxy. Could it be that intelligence wasn't solely defined by raw processing power or advanced neural architecture? Perhaps there was something uniquely valuable about the human capacity for creativity and adaptability, qualities that no amount of Zilvian superiority could replicate. The thought was unsettling, but it lingered in his mind as he prepared for the final stretch of the exam. The neural link pulsed faintly as Drax synchronized his interface with Maya's once more. This time, however, his actions were accompanied by a sense of unease. He no longer felt the same smug confidence that had fueled his earlier decisions. Instead, he was acutely aware of the precarious balance he was maintaining, a balance that could shatter with a single misstep. The realization filled him with a gnawing sense of dread, but he pushed it aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. The final questions loomed on the horizon, each one a daunting challenge designed to push the students to their absolute limits. Drax clenched his crystalline fingers, determined to see the exam through to the end. Whatever the outcome, he resolved to prove his worth, not just to the Galactic Academy, but to himself. The final segment of the exam had begun, and the room felt heavier than ever. The air seemed charged with the collective anxiety of the students, each vying to prove themselves among the galaxy's brightest. Maya leaned forward, her eyes scanning the glowing interface as the first question of the final section materialized. Her pulse quickened as she read the intricate problem, but she forced herself to stay calm. This was her moment to solidify all the effort she had poured into preparing for this challenge. Drax, on the other side of the chamber, straightened his posture. His crystalline skin glinted faintly in the ambient light as he focused on the holoscreen in front of him. The question was a multi-balance scenario requiring both strategic thinking and moral judgment. It presented a hypothetical planetary crisis where resources were scarce and decisions had to be made about how to distribute them to various alien species with conflicting needs. Each choice would lead to a cascade of consequences, some beneficial, others catastrophic. Maya approached the question with precision. She carefully examined each species' requirements, assessing their needs, vulnerabilities, and contributions to the interstellar community. Her mind worked like a careful craftsman's hands, shaping a solution that balanced fairness and pragmatism. Drax, however, hesitated. He felt an unfamiliar pang of discomfort as he analyzed the problem. Securing a solution from the Zilvian education system had always emphasized efficiency over empathy, prioritizing logical outcomes above all else. Yet, as he watched Maya build her response with a delicate balance of logic and compassion, he felt an unsettling doubt creeping into his mind. For several minutes, Drax worked in silence, crafting a solution that mirrored Maya's. He watched her progress through the neural link, adjusting his answers to match hers while attempting to maintain his own flair of superiority. But as the solution neared completion, a warning flashed across his holoscreen. The system had detected a minor discrepancy in his logic pathway, flagging his answer as potentially flawed. Drax frowned, reviewing the parameters with increasing frustration. He couldn't understand where he had gone wrong. Maya, unaware of Drax's struggle, submitted her answer and moved on to the next question. Her heart raced with a mix of exhilaration and exhaustion, but she refused to slow down. The next problem was another moral puzzle, this time set against the backdrop of a simulated war between two galactic factions. The students were tasked with devising a strategy to end the conflict while minimizing casualties. Maya's thoughts turned inward as she considered the ethical implications of her choices. She had always believed that true intelligence wasn't just about solving problems, but about understanding the human aversion to corruption and the cost behind those solutions. Drax, meanwhile, was growing increasingly agitated. The neural link continued to provide him with glimpses of Maya's progress, but it no longer felt like a lifeline. Instead, it became a mirror reflecting his own inadequacies. He could see how effortlessly she navigated the complexities of the exam, her decisions guided by a sense of purpose he couldn't replicate. For the first time in his academic career, Drax felt truly vulnerable. The realization struck him like a physical blow, shaking the foundation of his confidence. The next question appeared on the screens, and Drax forced himself to focus. It was a riddle, deceptively simple in its presentation but layered with intricate meaning. The task required interpreting a series of symbolic patterns that represented the evolution of a hypothetical species. Each symbol carried a hidden message about the species' cultural values, biological adaptations, and survival strategies. Drax's crystalline brain processed the symbols with mechanical precision, but the solution eluded him. He could analyze the patterns, but he couldn't grasp the underlying narrative they told. Maya, on the other hand, approached the riddle with a sense of curiosity. She allowed herself to imagine the species' journey, piecing together their story from the fragments provided. Her solution wasn't just an answer, it was a vivid reconstruction of the species' history, brought to life through her creative interpretation. She submitted her response with a sense of quiet satisfaction, unaware of the growing turmoil consuming Drax. As the exam neared its conclusion, the final question appeared. It was the most challenging problem yet, a culmination of everything the students had learned throughout their academic careers. The task required integrating multiple disciplines, science, philosophy, mathematics, and diplomacy, into a single cohesive solution. Maya felt the weight of the moment, but refused to let it overwhelm her. She took a deep breath and began working, her mind moving with fluid precision as she synthesized ideas and concepts into a unified whole. Drax stared at the question, his hands trembling slightly as he struggled to compose himself. The neural link was still active, feeding him fragments of Maya's progress, but it felt like a hollow gesture. He knew he could copy her solution, but the thought filled him with a sense of despair. What was the point of winning if it wasn't his victory? The question demanded originality, a quality he had spent the entire exam trying to replicate rather than cultivate. Maya finished her solution with seconds to spare, her fingers flying across the interface as she entered the final calculations. She leaned back in her chair, her chest rising and falling as she caught her breath. The exam had pushed her to her limits, but she felt a deep sense of accomplishment. Whatever the outcome, she knew she had given it her all. And Drax, however, was paralyzed. The timer ticked down mercilessly, each second a reminder of his failure to rise to the occasion. In a last desperate attempt, he submitted a hastily cobbled-together solution based on fragments of Maya's work. The interface chimed softly, signaling the end of the exam. The room fell silent as the students awaited the results. Maya closed her eyes, letting the tension drain from her body. She felt a quiet confidence in her performance, though she knew the competition had been fierce. Drax, on the other hand, felt a cold knot of dread tightening in his chest. For the first time in his life, he wasn't sure of his place in the world. The shimmering figure of the Loomis professor reappeared at the center of the room, her translucent form radiating calm authority. Her voice resonated in their minds as she announced that the results would be revealed shortly. Maya glanced around the room, taking in the exhausted but determined expressions of her peers. Her gaze briefly met Drax's, and she offered him a small, encouraging smile. He looked away, unable to meet her eyes. As the results began to load, Drax felt his crystalline skin grow cold. He had spent the entire exam trying to undermine Maya, but now he couldn't escape the nagging feeling that he had lost something far more important than a competition. The room remained silent as the results began to materialize on the central holographic display. Maya's chest tightened with anticipation, though she maintained a calm exterior. Her confidence was tempered by the knowledge that she had faced some of the brightest minds in the galaxy. Across the room, Drax sat stiffly, his crystalline fingers clenched tightly on the edge of his desk. A faint hum emanated from the holographic display as it processed the final rankings, illuminating the room with a pale, flickering light. The Loomis professor floated silently at the center of the chamber, her radiant form a calm presence amidst the rising tension. The students, still seated at their desks, cast nervous glances toward the display, their emotions ranging from hope to dread. Drax refused to look at Maya, his thoughts tangled in frustration and doubt. He had spent the exam tethered to her through the neural link, and now He dreaded the possibility that all his efforts might amount to nothing. Finally, the results appeared. A list of names, ranked from highest to lowest, scrolled slowly down the display. Each student's name was accompanied by their final score, glowing faintly in gold. Maya exhaled sharply as she saw her name at the very top of the list, her score a testament to her dedication and intellect. A small smile spread across her lips, a mixture of relief and pride washing over her. She had done it. She had proven that humanity could stand shoulder to shoulder with the galaxy's elite. Drax's gaze darted to his own name, which was several positions below Maya's. His heart sank as he registered his placement, a bitter reminder of his failure to outshine her. The neural link, his supposed advantage, had become a crutch that left him hollow. He clenched his jaw, forcing himself to keep his composure as his crystalline skin refracted the ambient light in sharp, fractured patterns. The Loomis professor's voice resonated in the minds of the students, breaking the heavy silence. Congratulations to all participants. This exam was not merely a test of knowledge, but a measure of your ability to adapt, innovate, and collaborate. Each of you has shown remarkable potential, but only one has emerged as the top performer. She turned her glowing gaze toward Maya, her translucent face unreadable but commanding. Maya of Earth, you have demonstrated exceptional skill and insight. The Galactic Academy recognizes your achievement with the highest honors. The room erupted into polite applause, though some claps were less enthusiastic than others. Maya stood and nodded respectfully toward the professor, her cheeks tinged with a faint flush of pride. She could feel the eyes of her peers on her, some filled with admiration, others with envy. She glanced briefly at Drax, hoping to offer him a gesture of goodwill, but he avoided her gaze, his expression a mask of stoic indifference. As the students began to leave the chamber, Maya lingered near her desk, gathering her belongings. She was still processing the magnitude of her victory when a faint shimmer caught her attention. Drax stood by the doorway, his crystalline form rigid and unapproachable. He seemed hesitant, as though caught between pride and the weight of his own disappointment. Maya hesitated for a moment before walking toward him. "Congratulations," she said softly, her tone sincere. "You did well." Drax's sharp, angular features remained unreadable, but his gaze briefly flickered toward her. He opened his mouth as if to respond, then closed it, the words dying on his tongue. Finally, he managed a curt nod. "Thank you," he said, his voice clipped but not unkind. He turned abruptly and left the chamber, leaving Maya to wonder if her words had reached him at all. Fraxes rode into his office through a mirror, leaving Maya to wonder if her words had reached him at all. Outside the examination hall, the other students had dispersed into small groups, their conversations buzzing with post-exam analysis and speculation. Maya walked alone, her thoughts drifting to the challenges she had faced and the lessons she had learned. She felt a deep sense of accomplishment, but also a strange pang of empathy for Drax. Despite his arrogance and cold demeanor, she sensed that his defeat had shaken him in a way she couldn't fully understand. Drax, meanwhile, had retreated to a quiet corner of the Academy's sprawling campus. The crystalline trees around him refracted the sunlight into dazzling patterns, but he took no notice of their beauty. His mind was consumed with the realization that he had been bested, not by a Zilvian or a Loomis, but by a human. The humiliation was sharp and bitter, but beneath it lay something deeper, a gnawing curiosity. How had Maya succeeded where he had faltered? What did she possess that he lacked? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the campus, Drax made a decision. He couldn't let his defeat define him. If Maya's success was built on something he didn't understand, then he needed to learn. He resolved to study her methods, to uncover the source of her strength, and to use that knowledge to rebuild his own confidence. The next day, as the Academy resumed its regular schedule, Drax sought out Maya. He found her in the library, surrounded by towering shelves of holographic texts and ancient scrolls. She was deeply engrossed in her work, her fingers moving deftly across a tablet as she compiled notes. Drax hesitated for a moment, then cleared his throat. Maya looked up, surprised to see him. "Drax," she said, her tone neutral but not unfriendly. "What brings you here?" He shifted uncomfortably, his crystalline skin catching the light in subtle flashes. "I wanted to talk," he said, his voice measured. "About the exam." Maya raised an eyebrow but nodded, setting her tablet aside. "Of course," she said, gesturing for him to sit. "What's on your mind?" Drax hesitated, then sat across from her. He studied her face, searching for any hint of condescension or mockery, but found none. Her expression was open, her curiosity genuine. For the first time, he allowed himself to lower his guard. "I don't understand how you did it," he admitted, his voice low. "You approached those problems in ways I couldn't anticipate. It was like you saw something I didn't." Maya tilted her head, considering his words. "I think it's because I wasn't just solving problems," she said. "I was trying to understand the stories behind them. Every question had a context, a reason for being asked. I tried to see the bigger picture, not just the details." Drax frowned, his crystalline brow furrowing. "Stories?" he repeated, the word foreign on his tongue. "Zilvian education doesn't focus on stories. We're taught to prioritize logic and efficiency." "Maybe that's the difference," Maya said gently. "Logic is important, but so is empathy. Understanding the motivations and perspectives of others can make all the difference." Her words lingered in Drax's mind as he left the library that day. For the first time, he began to question the foundations of his own education, wondering if there was more to intelligence than what he had been taught. Drax stood silently in one of the Academy's observation gardens, gazing up at the night sky. The crystalline trees around him shimmered faintly in the moonlight, their intricate branches reflecting the stars above. The serenity of the scene contrasted sharply with the storm raging in his mind. The conversation with Maya earlier in the library had unsettled him more than he cared to admit. Her words about empathy and understanding the stories behind problems lingered, reshaping how he viewed not only the exam but his entire approach to learning and problem. The Zilvian culture he had been raised in valued efficiency and precision above all else. To a Zilvian, emotions and stories were secondary, useful only when they served a practical purpose. Yet as Drax reflected on the exam and Maya's performance, he began to see the limitations of that mindset. She had approached the challenges with a depth of insight that extended beyond pure logic. Her solutions carried a sense of purpose and humanity that his own responses had lacked. Maya's words about seeing the bigger picture resonated deeply with him. For the first time, Drax questioned whether his species' rigid adherence to logic had blinded him to other forms of intelligence. If empathy and creativity were as powerful as Maya had demonstrated, then perhaps the Zilvian way wasn't as superior as he had always believed. The next morning, Drax resolved to confront his doubts head-on. He sought out Maya again, this time with a clearer purpose. He found her in one of the Academy's practice halls, where she was working through a series of simulations designed to test strategic thinking. The holographic environment around her shifted dynamically, creating scenarios that required quick judgment and adaptability. Drax watched for a moment, noting the ease with which she navigated the challenges. Then he stepped forward, his crystalline form catching the light as he approached. Maya noticed him and paused the simulation, her expression curious. "Drax," she said, offering a small smile. "Back again?" He nodded, his voice steady but quieter than usual. "I need to understand," he said, "not just how you succeeded, but why your approach worked. I want to learn from you." Her smile widened slightly, but there was no hint of condescension in her expression. She gestured toward a nearby bench, and the two of them sat down together. For the next hour, Maya explained her thought process during the exam, describing how she approached each problem with a combination of logic, creativity, and empathy. She spoke about the importance of understanding the context behind the questions, the motivations of the hypothetical scenarios, and the broader implications of her decisions. Drax listened intently, his crystalline features reflecting faintly in the sunlight. He asked thoughtful questions, challenging some of her ideas but never dismissing them. As they spoke, he began to see the world through her perspective, a perspective that valued the interplay between reason and emotion, precision and intuition. It was a perspective that felt both foreign and fascinating to him. Their conversation marked the beginning of an unlikely partnership. Over the following weeks, Drax and Maya worked together on various projects and simulations, combining their strengths in ways neither had anticipated. Drax's analytical precision complemented Maya's creative intuition, and their collaboration produced results that outshone anything either of them could achieve alone. Through their partnership, Drax began to change. He learned to value empathy as a tool for understanding complex problems, recognizing that intelligence wasn't limited to raw processing power. Maya, in turn, gained a deeper appreciation for Drax's meticulous approach and his ability to uncover flaws in even the most well-crafted plans. Their mutual respect grew, transforming their initial rivalry into a genuine friendship. The Academy noticed the shift in Drax's demeanor. His professors, who had once seen him as an aloof and arrogant student, now observed a more reflective and open-minded individual. His peers, too, began to see a different side of him, one that was willing to listen, collaborate, and learn from others. Drax's transformation wasn't immediate or effortless, but it was genuine, and it marked a turning point in his life. The final test of their partnership came during the Academy's annual team competition, an event that brought together students from all species to solve a series of complex challenges. Maya and Drax entered as co-leaders of their team, combining their unique strengths to guide their group through the competition. The challenges were grueling, testing not only their intellect but also their ability to work together under pressure. In the final round, their team faced a seemingly impossible task, negotiating a peace treaty between two warring factions whose demands were entirely incompatible. The solution required not only strategic thinking, but also an understanding of the cultural and emotional dynamics at play. Maya and Drax worked tirelessly, pooling their knowledge and perspectives to craft a proposal that satisfied both sides without compromising the core values of either faction. When the judges announced the results, their team emerged as the winner. The audience erupted into applause, but for Maya and Drax, the victory was about more than the competition. It was a testament to how far they had come, not just as individuals, but as partners who had learned to see the world through each other's eyes. As the celebration died down, Drax turned to Maya, his crystalline features glowing softly in the ambient light. "Thank you," he said, his voice sincere. "You've taught me more than I ever thought possible, not just about the exam, but about what it means to truly understand." Maya smiled, her eyes warm. "And you've taught me to look deeper, to question my assumptions. I think we've both grown because of this." The two of them stood together in the fading light, their unlikely friendship a symbol of what could be achieved when different perspectives came together. The lessons they had learned at the Galactic Academy would stay with them for the rest of their lives, shaping their futures in ways neither could have imagined. For Drax, the experience was transformative. He returned to the Zilvian homeworld with a renewed sense of purpose, determined to bring what he had learned to his people. Maya, meanwhile, continued her studies at the Academy, using her newfound confidence to inspire others and push the boundaries of what humans could achieve in the galaxy. In the end, their story wasn't just about an exam or a rivalry. It was about the power of understanding, collaboration, and the realization that true intelligence lies not in what separates us, but in what brings us together.